Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks for everyone joining us from the United States, and also good morning to friends and colleagues who turning from Indonesia. I'm Yudo. I'm a master student at the University of Michigan, and thank you so much for being here with us. Today's event, How to Conduct Research in Indonesia, is organized in collaboration between Graduate Education and Training in Southeast Asian Studies, or GETSI, and the American Institute for Indonesian Studies, AIFIS. We are very excited to bring together a diverse group of speakers whose work spans across the disciplines from ethnomusicology, anthropology, conservation, and also history in Indonesia. We will begin today's session with Mas Anas Bentari, Program Manager at AIFIS, who will share an overview of the research in Indonesia from AIFIS perspective. And I believe that Mas Anas with AIFIS has supported many international researchers and is well known in the general process and recent developments of research permits in Indonesia. So the floor is yours, Mas Anas.
Okay, thank you, Mas Yudo. Hello, everyone. Uh, is my voice clear?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Let me share screen first. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and good morning from Jakarta. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Anas Bentari. I'm from AIFIS Jakarta. Um, I'm so honored to be part of this webinar alongside my distinguished colleague um, from Cornell, Emory, and Wisconsin University. I'll be sharing some of what I've learned from helping researchers navigating the permit process in Indonesia. Maybe some of you are familiar with the process, but if you were coming to Indonesia before the pandemic, I think there are some changes and some updates in the protocols in permitting process in Indonesia. Uh, this process is essential not only for compliance with Indonesian law, but also to ensure a smooth and ethically research experience. This won't be an in-depth walkthrough every step, but I'd like to give you a big picture of the entire research permitting in Indonesia. The goal is to help you feel less overwhelmed and give you a clear sense of where to start and what to expect. For more detailed information, I've included links at the end of the slide, which includes the BRIN's official manuals and also IFIS wiki that we prepare as a point of reference to help you dive deeper when you're ready. Okay, in this presentation, we'll cover some topics. First, a quick intro to the research permit framework. And second, the main institution you'll be working with, a step-by-step look at the overall process, and then what documents you'll need at each stage, and then typical timelines and some helpful tips from me, and also extra notes that you can read as a point of reference. Let's start with the introduction to the research permit framework. So Indonesia has a formal process in place for granting research permits to foreign researchers. This is not just about paperwork. It's about making sure your research aligns with the national priorities and follows their ethical standards. But more than that, it's designed to encourage collaboration between international and local institutions. And that connection is really important, and that what IFIS is doing, and that's part of our mission. Uh, there are three main players you will be working with throughout the research permit process and visa process in Indonesia. First, there is BRIN, that's the National Research and Innovation Agency. They're in charge of reviewing your research proposal, giving ethical clearance, approving your research activities. Uh, they're the main institution you're working with in the entire process. And the next, you will work with Indonesian immigrations who handle your visa and stay permit. And the last, there is your host institution in Indonesia, or we call it counterpart, sponsor. This could be a university or research center or maybe governmental body. They play a key role in sponsoring and supporting your application. Um, okay, the first step in the process is getting ethical clearance from BRIN. This is a required step before any research can officially begin. Once your application is approved, BRIN will issue document called Surat Izin Penelitian or Research Permit Letter or Approval Research. This letter is your green light to move forward with your research in Indonesia. The main goal here is to make sure your project aligns with Indonesian ethical standard and support the country's research priorities. Now let me break this process down a bit. First, register through BRIN's website and make account at clearanceethic.brin.go.id, and then you'll complete a self-assessment of your research ethics. Submit your research proposal along with required documents. Then your proposal will go through a review by BRIN's committee. They usually meet within about 14 days or 2 weeks to review your application. After that, there is a permit payment step. You'll get an e-billing notice via email. So you need to pay, or you can ask your edition host to pay on your behalf. And then you reimburse them. Finally, once everything is approved, you'll receive your research permit letter or surat izin penelitian. Please note that this process is conducted by researchers themselves, but still require close collaboration with their home and host institution. If you don't have a host institution in Indonesia, feel free to contact us and we can help and connect you with a counterpart who share similar research interests. Now, let's talk about the documents you'll need for ethical clearance. There are three key items to prepare early on. First, your research proposal, of course, and then a guarantee letter from Indonesian research counterpart, and a letter of agreement of a memorandum of understanding or MOU or MOA or whatever it is. We call it letter of agreement between your home and host institutions. These documents are essential, but let me highlight something many researchers have told us, that the part that often takes the most time is setting up the MOU or MOU creation with your Indonesian counterpart. So plan ahead. That's because the MOU or LOA formalize your collaboration. It's what shows that your research is being done in partnership with a recognized Indonesian institution. The good news is that this doesn't always have to go through the university central administrations. In many cases, some scholars, it can be established in department to department level, which is often quicker and more manageable for researchers. So it's a great idea to start the conversation with your counterpart as early as you can. And if you're not sure where to begin, we're happy to help connect you with someone in your field. And the other documents are the file passport, cover letter from home institution, and research ethic review forms. You can see the manual prints to see the materials of the research ethics review, because there are some forms that you need to fill out and submit alongside with the other the other documents. Next, after your you have received the surat izin penelitian or research permit letter, the next step is applying for your limited stay permit visa. We call it E29 visa index. The visa application is submitted online by your host institution in Indonesia through the official site, immigration site. Um, Here's how the process flows. First, make sure you've got your research permit letter or surat izin penelitian from BRIN, and then your host will begin the E29 online visa application. After that comes e-visa payment, like the BRIN process. They will send you an e-billing, and then you pay, and then you will if they approve your visa, then you'll receive e-visa by email. And also, don't forget to communicate with your Indonesian counterpart, because sometimes they send the e-visa to your counterpart, to your sponsor. This whole step relies on close coordination with your host institution or sponsor based in Indonesia. They will handle in the submission of the application on your behalf. So keeping in touch with them is the key. Okay. Next is the documents for E29 visa application. There are three main documents you need to prepare early on. First, a letter of statement and guarantee signed by your Indonesian counterpart, and then surat izin penelitian or research approval letter from BRIN, and travel itinerary, if any. Once the other documents are valid passport, proof of living expense, and curriculum vitae, and also latest photograph. Once your e-visa granted, keep in mind it must be used within 90 days from the date of issuance. That 90-day window is your visa validity period. In other words, the time you have to enter Indonesia using that visa. Visa validity is different from your period of stay once you're in the country. So make sure to check your visa carefully for that period of stay information. Um, okay, otherwise, if otherwise, if you don't enter Indonesia within that 90 days, your e-visa will be expired and you need to reapply. So make sure to check regularly. And then once you arrive in Indonesia, so this is a post-arrival procedures. The post-arrival procedures covering the travel permit from the National Police and the research notification letter from the Ministry of Home Affairs. Uh, the good news, you're automatically granted a temporary stay permit, or we call it ITAS or KITAS, when you enter the country. That means no need to visit the immigration office, because your ITAS will be sent straight to your sponsor by email. Along with that, you also receive the multi-exit re-entry permit, or we call it MERP. So you can leave Indonesia temporarily and going back to Indonesia with that MERP. There are two additional documents to know about that I highlighted in yellow. First, a travel permit or surat keterangan jalan issued by the National Police. And the second one is research notification letter from the Ministry of Home Affairs or Kemendagri. Now these two are, I would say it's less mandatory. Yeah, but still obligated. But I would say it's less mandatory. So don't worry, they won't hold you back from starting your fieldwork just because you don't have those two documents. I think you can go ahead and start your research. Just carry the documents from BRIN and from immigration all the time. I think that's more than enough. However, if needed, someone else can handle the travel permit and research notification letter process on your behalf. So in short, once you arrive in Indonesia, well, there are still a couple of things to wrap up. You're well on your way. Just go ahead and go to the field. Um, okay, this is the additional notes and best practice that I prepare from my experience in helping our scholars. Um, First, your Indonesian counterpart or host should be affiliated with a local university or research institute or NGO. That's that's an important part, uh, important piece of the puzzle. Okay, this is what I've learned. The advantages of choosing a university as a host institution are particularly their experience with the research permit process and support infrastructure, like they have international office, they have staff that can help you work with the paperwork. Uh, that's what I've learned from the advantages of choosing a university as the host institution. But still, you can work with the research institute or NGO as long as they have a legal entity in Indonesia. If even you're working with a small NGO in a rural area, but if they have a legal entity, it's not a problem. It's just work with them. Next is allow between 3 months for the permitting and visa process. Um, it takes time and strategy. I know it. So plan ahead. Um, and next, regulation may change. Yeah, of course. Every time they change the regulation, even though during the pandemic until now, they always regularly change and update the regulation, especially the print. So please check the print and publication website for the latest updates. We also update the regulations into our website, so you can find the updated information on our website. And then about publication or join scientific meetings, make sure that's reflected in your MOU or LOA with your host institution, because I think that part is so important. Um, if it's not reflected in your MOU, I'm afraid your application will be rejected. So make sure you mention about the publication or joint publication. And then you'll be responsible for paying all permit and visa fees. But don't worry if uh, your host institution will handle the payment process for you if you don't have Indonesian bank account. Um, because sometimes transfer money from abroad just like didn't work. Uh, so you can ask your Indonesian counterpart to help you pay the all the fees, and then you reimburse them later. And then throughout the process, it's really important to stay in close with your host institution, especially during the ethical process and visa process. Some documents may be some documents may need to be translated into Bahasa Indonesia. So clear communication is the key. Um, oh yeah, this is a new update. So now you're eligible to use Indonesia AutoGate at arrival and departure immigration checkpoint. Uh, because you're visa holders, you can use AutoGate. It's simple. You just need to scan your passport and wait for facial recognition, and done. You can enter Indonesia. And then they will record your data and they will send the ITAS or KITAS and the izin masuk kembali or MERP to your sponsored email. So make sure after you enter Indonesia, you communicate with your Indonesian counterpart, because they will receive your KITAS through their email. And then also This is what I've learned. What we've learned, don't book flight ticket until e-visa issued. Yeah, because if you will make trouble if you book your flight ticket before your e-visa issued. Because uh, I would say immigration is unreachable. No one, only God and them knows how when your visa will be issued. Uh, and the next one is please note that conducting research in Indonesia without proper research permissions can result in a penalty or maybe a potential ban on the future research permit. So make sure you follow the regulation, follow the rules. Uh, to wrap up, if you'd like to learn more uh, or revisit any of the steps we've talked about today, I encourage you to visit the AIFIS website for the latest information on research permits and visa for foreign researchers. We do our best to keep everything as up to date as possible. But since this process can change and are outside of our control, we really appreciate your help. If you notice any broken links or outdated details, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. That way we can make sure the resources stay accurate and helpful for everyone. Um, you can also download here the print manual uh, on research ethical clearance and IFIS Guide as a point of reference. So you can download, you can click the link and download the materials. Okay, thank you so much. Best of luck with your research journey in Indonesia. Yeah, that's my email. You can reach out to me. You can send me email if you have any questions or if you want to begin your research in Indonesia, or if you are in Indonesia and you want meet with us, have a coffee or lunch. Feel free to contact me. Thank you so much.
Thank you for such an insightful presentation, Mas Anas. And for our next speaker, we will hear from Professor Maho Ishiguro. She is an assistant professor of ethnomusicology at Emory University. Professor Ishiguro, the floor is yours.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm going to take a minute to set this up. Portion of the screen. I have a little bit of a slide and also my little notes. So I'm gonna just show you guys the slides rather than my note, because notes are just words. All right, can you guys see this well enough?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Great. I just wanted to move this. Great. So I guess I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Maho Ishiguro. I'm an assistant professor of ethnomusicology at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. And my research has looked at performing arts from Indonesia, particularly traditional music and dance traditions. I did my graduate work, both a master's degree and a PhD in music and ethnomusicology at Wesley University in Connecticut. And I got my PhD in 2018 and did a bunch of like adjunct teaching gigs and visiting assistant professor positions in everywhere in New England for a few years before moving to Atlanta, Georgia, 2022, so 3 years ago for my current position at Emory. So both my master's thesis and PhD dissertation were based on my field work in Indonesia. My first field work was for my MA thesis, which was on Javanese gamelan. It's a Javanese traditional music practice. And my advisor, Pak Smarsam, who is this really incredible prominent scholar of Javanese gamelan, and also my teacher for playing, learning how to play gamelan. He connected me with important teachers in Java for interviews and practice of music and dance. And I went from there. The research was basically self-funded. I didn't really have like a big budget from the university or anywhere external, which I think is often the case for master's degree students. And when you go to PhD, you might apply for much bigger funding, and I'll talk more about that. I feel like maybe we have both MA and PhD students, or people who are in taking that journey in this Zoom room. So I'll just go through both of it. But I took summer jobs and saved up to support my trips basically. And field work number 2 was the most intense and longest one with a larger scope because, I was writing my PhD dissertation. And this was a multi-site research on dance and music tradition from Aceh, Sumatra, a completely different location from what I looked at for my MA thesis. I was looking at this dance from Aceh and how that became hugely popular in and outside of Indonesia. I spent a few months in Aceh and then a few months in Jakarta and Yogyakarta over a period of 16 months in 2015 and 2016. And this was funded by Fulbright Hayes DDRA and a couple other smaller kind of like society based funding. And then fieldwork number 3 is the most recent one. There have been a number of short trips I made between fieldwork number 2 and number 3 for my own practice of dance and music. I'm not sure how many of you might be doing performing arts kind of field work, but if you are, then I think you can resonate that. Keeping up with your practice of performing arts is pretty important if that is your topic. And also my in-laws lived in Java. So these trips weren't particularly for field work or data collection per se, but that was a way for me to keep up with my practice of the arts and also to know like the current events in the area, right? Like who's practicing what and what kind of things are happening, what kind of events are happening, what kind of political scenes there were, just to observe. You're not really collecting data. Anyhow, so the third field work was just a few months ago, and it was funded by AIFIS, where Mas Anas is representing today, American Institute for Indonesian Studies, and the locations were in Jakarta and Surakarta, Central Java. And I worked with my collaborators at the EC Surakarta, which is this National Conservatory of Performing Arts in Surakarta. And I was looking at this dance piece called Shrimp Moncar from one of the palaces. And this project actually started during the early COVID era when we were all stuck where we were. And at that point, it's like, well, I can't go to Indonesia and I can't perform. So what am I going to do? And I thought it might be interesting to translate this one book it was just sitting on my desk forever. And it was on Javanese dance. It was written by a dance professor at EC Surakarta. And so I did this like collaborative translation project with a few other dancers and scholars in Southeast Asia. And I just really enjoy the collaborative nature of it. So then since then, I've been doing a handful of like mini collaborative projects with Chinese and Javanese musicians and dancers. And I'm hoping to materialize this experience, the collaborative research experience, into my second book project. So that's the list of my like big chunks of field work periods and experiences. Now it's been 10 years since the 2015-16 when I was fully immersed in this like long continuous fieldwork period in Indonesia and living among Indonesian musicians and practicing art forms and conducting interviews and documenting and reading dissertation and MA thesis in their libraries. There are some reflections. I just finished writing finished my manuscript. So like as I had this entire academic year on a sabbatical, and that's all I have to do. I was just writing and reading and doing research. And there's some things I really kind of reflected on, like how I conducted field work and how I related to the people I was working with. They are many things, but there are a couple things that made my fieldwork successful, I think. And two things were completely just, two important things that I find important and were in my control, and were keys to my successful fieldwork. And that one is the language training, and another one is the practice of the arts. So the first time when I went to Indonesia, which was like right before my MA program, I didn't speak a word of Indonesian, which seems like a stupid thing to do. Like if you're going to do anime and ethnomusicology and you're going to go to the field and you're going to be reading things in Indonesian, what's going on? I did not have that because my MA program, the institution I went for my graduate studies, they didn't have Indonesian, and my BA didn't have Indonesian either. So I just didn't have the opportunity. So I took advantage of summer programs with scholarship. So first one was CIASI at UW Medicine, which came with FLOS scholarship. I'm seeing a lot of Indonesian names in this room, so you guys are thinking, "Oh, we don't need this." I know you don't need it, but if you don't speak in Indonesian yet, but those programs are fantastic. So FLOS covered my travel, living expenses, tuitions, I think. And then for the second summer, I applied for a critical language program in Malang, Indonesia. And this was founded by the Department of State. Um, I've done so many language programs in the past, and not just for Indonesian. But this was the most intense and most wonderful culture immersion in language study I have ever experienced, hands down. This made me be able to speak and navigate Indonesian language. Um, and then the following summer, I did a Koti, which was supported by Fulbright in Salatiga, Central Java. This again was full tuition, board, and travel. They were all covered by the program as well. And in the field, I saw such a difference in the kind of relationship I could build and types of engagement I could have with the people I was working with if you speak the language. Versus you came prepared, did not come prepared learning that language. So and it wasn't just about whether you can conduct the interviews, but it was more about like the respect for the people that you work with. Yeah, so that's about the language. The second key to success for me was the practice of the arts. Now, this is not simply because it's fun to dance and play music, and it is good for my soul. However, it has definitely been much more than that in my fieldwork and research, and it became my, like a research method and lens to analyze and build a relationship with the people you're working with. So a decade after the long and intensive fieldwork year, I did a little bit of reflection and thought about what worked and what I would do again for my future fieldwork. Lasting friendship and relationship with the people you are studying about is important. They want to keep in touch with you. Like after you left, they will still like want to be in touch with you. And if you don't, you personally feel like you're exploiting them and their work. You will feel that way. And it's not about whether you paid for your time, for their time or expertise or the lessons or interviews. But you should go in with an expectation that you will be building a long-lasting relationship that would go beyond your dissertation or the book project. And this is also particularly important for the new visa and the research permit process that Mas Anas just talked about. The government is seeking more of a partnership between you and an Indonesian counterpart. What else? The practicing of the arts allowed me to build relationship and trust that brought me to places. So this is about access, right? So like practices, meetings, archives, they see that your commitment is real. And there are libraries at the royal palaces I could not have gone if I didn't have gained the trust and show my commitment to my teachers at the palace. So there's that. And showing the commitment and gaining the trust granted me the rights to ask the kind of questions that you want to ask too. Another thing would be some advice, just be kind to everyone. And I mean it like everyone. Some areas which might not have gotten many foreigners going into studying the arts or other topics, I guess. For me, I became sort of like the representative or ambassador of where I was from, whether that was US or Japan. And lastly, consider giving back in some way, when I was in the field, I gave English lessons to my friends because that was something that they were lacking. Reviewed their applications for grad schools in US, if they're applying to the US institutions. I sponsored performances and documentations, created online performance spaces, collected donations for them. You are going to have to see what's helpful for them and how you could help them realistically, but those are kind of things that you might want to keep in mind when you're thinking, you want to build the relationship that would last. So visa and research permit in Indonesia. Masana's talked about this and illustrated really important things. I'll just go really quickly. The key for me for my fieldwork experience, I think, was to get help and support. I think we tend to think that, we got this funding and we're going to Indonesia. I read all those books I need, and you feel like you have all the control and you can manage this all. Not so sometimes, and it's important to recognize that and get help in the sport. So the two places that I got in touch to seek help was AMINEF, which is American Indonesian Exchange Foundation. If you're getting grants like Fulbright, they will contact you and be like, how can we help you, right? Which I was not expecting, but without them, I could not have gotten successfully the visa and research permit. And then, of course, the second is AIFIS with Mas Anas. And things that take time, MOU was definitely one of the top things that took time for me. And in communication with your research counterparts was important. There are kind of two people I had to be in touch with, and the one was my, direct counterpart or the research partner, I suppose. Another person was somebody who works in the international office. And I think he was one who was actually doing applying for me and doing payment process and all that. So just remember there are a couple of people you need to be in touch with. There are a variety of parts of application that might take time. And for me particularly, the payment and fee process was a little bit difficult. So just keep that in mind, that those things are coming to you. Do I still have some time? Should I finish?
You can try to wrap up if you want. Yeah.
Okay. I'll just go quickly. So after the field work, you're going to be writing a dissertation. I did this pretty recently, kind of recently, 2016 to 2018. Just some, advice from me, I suppose, for somebody has gone through it. Let your topic and focus and arguments change pre and post field work. You don't have to stick to what you have. There are going to be things that comes to you while in your field work, and that might give you more clarity. That might confuse you. Whatever. Follow your heart and see what's interesting to you, and that might be different from your original topic, but that's okay. One of the kind of most helpful advice I got from my mentor was when I asked him, this just feels like a really, big free writing process because there's no page limit or there's no strict format. And what he said was just sit down and write, just start writing. And that was really helpful. Another thing was just outline, and outline again. So you don't feel like you're lost. You know the path you're going. And those are, things that a lot of us already do, but making a really clear outline for me was very important. Another thing is writing support group. Write in the groups is fun, is socializing, kind of there's a little bit of aspect of socialization or socializing, and it just doesn't feel that isolating. And taking advantage of your writing center at your university. I didn't write in my first language. English is my second language. So I always have to have somebody who looks through my grammar and make sure that things make sense. And universities usually have a writing center. And assuming there are a good number of international students, they might have people who can look through your writing and clear it up, I suppose. I'll just leave it there. There are a couple other things I wrote up on the screen that you can look at, but that might be a little bit further in the future. So I will stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Ishiguro. The last things that you mentioned is really important, especially for several of the attendees who is actually not their mother tongue is not English. So yeah, that
Right.
is really helpful, including to me. And next we have Dr. Wendy Erb, who will bring us into the field of biological anthropology and conservation science. She is currently the affiliate to the Cornell lab at the Cornell University, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Masudo. And it's very exciting to be here with all of you. Give me just 1 second to get my screen sharing set up. Okay. You should see a full screen. Thumbs up.
Yes.
Yay, great, thank you. So just a quick introduction. I am Wendy Erb, and I'm a postdoctoral associate at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. I am actually situated within a center within that lab that's called the K. Lisa Yang Center for Conservation Bioacoustics. And I'll talk a little bit more about what the heck all of that is. And my expertise is in primatology and animal behavior, tropical field ecology. So I will be reflecting on some very different experiences from what Professor Maho just shared, but there will be a lot of parallels in our reflections and insights on what makes a really successful research experience in Indonesia. I am shocked to say out loud that I'm coming up on a 20-year anniversary of the first time that I started doing research in Indonesia, which is just wild and crazy to reflect that it's been 20 years. So happy anniversary to me in Indonesia. You can see over the last 20 years, I've hopped around between islands, I've hopped around between institutions, between some of Indonesia's largest and most prestigious national universities to smaller regional universities that are full of like really vibrant and hungry and enthusiastic people. And I've like just genuinely enjoyed and been so grateful for each and every one of those partners. So I'll take the first like 5 minutes or so of my allotted time to just kind of give you a little tour through what some of those experiences have been like over the last 20 years. Um, so as I mentioned, I'm a primatologist. I'm really interested in the behavior of wild primates in particular. And Indonesia is like an amazing place to go if you love primates. It's one of the world's most biodiverse countries for primates. And so when I first came to Indonesia, it was to study this super cool and weird and funny looking monkey that's known by the native people of the Mentawai Islands as Simakobu. And weirdly enough, the closest living relative of the Simakobu is actually the proboscis monkey that is endemic to the island of Borneo. So I showed up there 20 years younger than I am today, early in my PhD training at Stony Brook University, where I was studying biological anthropology with a specialization in primatology. And so I can't believe how lucky I am that I got to live 2 years in this like amazing rustic and remote camp in the middle of this like lush primary forest, together with the island's indigenous human and non-human primates, as well as, shared a bedroom with bats and all kinds of other creatures. And my research was focusing on the strategies and signals and the acoustic signals in particular that adult males use in their reproductive competition. So basically, they're fighting over females, and I was really interested in understanding how and why they do that. And so my days were spent, very long days, spent following around these monkeys and giving them names and learning all the details of their intimate lives. Camp life was wonderful. We had no phone signal, like hardly anywhere on the whole island, months without electricity and extremely limited supplies of fresh vegetables. So it was an intense experience and also one I would not trade for anything. And so I finished up there. I went home the very end of 2006. Some data collection continued by a field team until 2007. And then I was back in the US, like writing my dissertation, entering all the data from my notebooks, and doing lots of procrastinating, but also like working and writing. And so it wasn't like for another 7 years until I was able to return to Indonesia, this time as a postdoc at Rutgers University, and fulfilling a lifelong dream of one day being able to study these incredible red apes, the orangutan, on the island of Borneo. And so there I undertook 3 years of field work. This time I spread it out more. So I be in the field like for 6 months out of the year and back in the US for 6 months out of the year. So I broke it up a little bit more than I did for my dissertation. And there I worked at the Tawanan Research Center in Central Kalimantan, which is a permanent camp, a permanent research station that's managed by one Indonesian university and two foreign universities. And so I was still really interested in male communication, and in particular, like these really amazing sounds that orangutan make called long calls. And I was also able to add some new research methods so I could look at the health and energetic status of these animals and how that could tell us, or how it was connected to changes in their voice. So like what kinds of information is potentially captured in our voices that might tell others something about how we're feeling or what kind of health or energetic status we're in. So there at Tawanan, I spent countless joyful mornings sloshing through flooded swamps at 3 a.m. to very expertly catch orangutan urine before the crack of dawn, and also an experience I wouldn't trade for the world. And that project actually continued on, this time with support of a Fulbright scholarship, where I got to spend a year in the lab at the veterinary school at Universitas Gadjah Mada in Yogyakarta. And there I learned to study the intestinal parasites of orangutans from like the many hundreds of poop samples that I'd collected over 3 years of field work. And, I am definitely more of a field work person than a lab work person, but I really loved this chance to work closely day in and day out with these extraordinary young women who were studying to be veterinarians, and are very dear friends, and colleagues. And I really loved like having the chance to live in Yogyakarta and kind of get a completely different picture of an experience in Indonesian culture and life. And then in 2019, I started working at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. So this is our very beautiful laboratory there in the kind of middle of the woods. We're rather set away from the rest of campus, and surrounded by this beautiful forest that right now is starting to fill up with birds. It's amazing. And so I came here to like really kind of hone in on my kind of obsession with vocal communication of primates, and sort of dig into some other technologies and other approaches that can be used to like understand acoustic communication of animals or sounds in nature more broadly. And so the center in which I sit, this Center for Conservation Bioacoustics, the mission of the center is to collect and interpret the sounds in nature by developing and applying innovative conservation technologies to inspire and inform conservation of wildlife and habitats. And one of the foundational approaches that our center uses is passive acoustic monitoring, which is the use of these autonomous or unattended acoustic recorders to monitor animals and their environments. And so since 2018, I actually started doing passive acoustic monitoring work before I came to Cornell. I also had support from the American Association of University Women to come to Cornell and start a fellowship where I could learn more deeply about those methods. And I have bad animations here. I'm just going to click through the animations, and just to introduce the three main study areas where I've been working since 2018 in the Mungkubaru Education and Research Forest, which is in Central Kalimantan, where I work intimately with indigenous Dayak Ngaju communities in the mosaic forests that are home to large unprotected populations of endangered gibbons and orangutans, and where we've been using sound to monitor the populations of wild apes and other animals. Most recently, I started working up in Kutai National Park, which is in East Kalimantan, where I recently assumed the position as the director of Indonesia's oldest orangutan research station, and the last stronghold for the subspecies of orangutan, the Northeast Bornean orangutan, remaining in Indonesia. And then my last project is in Nusantara, which is Indonesia's new capital city, where I work with Bali, Pasir, and Bugis communities bordering Balikpapan Bay to study social and ecological impacts of the development of Nusantara on human and non-human communities and forests. And so in all of these projects, I'm really lucky to work really closely with local communities to study the sounds of their forests and focus a lot of the research on species and animals that are also important to communities. I will say that beyond research, I love research, collecting data, designing studies, even writing papers. It's all super fun. But I also love developing education, outreach, and training programs with and for local people, that especially programs that highlight and celebrate the connections that people have to their environments, and that we share with non-humans. And so here's just a few images from some community programs we have led in Mungkubaru in Central Kalimantan. So we've developed bioacoustics curriculum for local high schools and organized a field trip to the forest where the students got hands-on experience conducting biodiversity and bioacoustics research. They were incredible. It was really impressive to see how quickly they really picked up on and how passionate they were to use these tools, like sophisticated research tools. They just picked them up in a few minutes. It was really heartwarming. And then most recently, we teamed up with a local art group, the Borneo Art Play, to create a bioacoustics workshop. The kids made like shadow puppets that were focused on different species that are found in their forests and celebrated local culture and language. And then we had like a customized puppet show that was for the kids and featured a gibbon and an Indian cuckoo and their friendship. And so the last kind of research piece that I want to highlight, just kind of giving you like a diversity of experiences that one can have working in Indonesia over 20 years. Working at Cornell has been really amazing because it's opened up some new opportunities to collaborate with researchers across a much larger region, which is something I would never have imagined possible. So with several of my colleagues at the Yang Center and amazing partners in Malaysia and Indonesia at UGM, at UMT, and at University Science Malaysia, we've cultivated this bioacoustics equipment and training, or BEAT program, to support practitioners with training, mentoring, a year of mentoring and equipment to establish their own conservation-oriented bioacoustics projects with the goal of like really empowering this locally led research network and to help cultivate the collaborative and peer mentoring approach that's also crucial for solving conservation problems. So that's kind of the big picture of my research experience in Indonesia. And I'll spend the last few minutes here just kind of reflecting on some of the challenges and obstacles, as well as a lot of the opportunities and ways to really make this experience shine. And I think a lot of these, like, luckily, most of these have already been highlighted. So this is just a repetition of the message that there is complex bureaucracy, though if anyone has worked in a big university like Cornell and tried to get an MOU, it's, to be fair, not really that easy either. So there are complex pieces and steps involved. And it can be kind of not that hard to miss a step, or, I will say like the immigration and visa or research permitting process has like hugely improved in the last 20 years that I've been working in Indonesia. But inevitably I still like miss a document or fill out something wrong. And it's always kind of a little bit of a game of whack-a-mole to figure out which of the things I uploaded is wrong. But I always get there in the end. So it is very surmountable, and there are always really kind and helpful people to get you through. I think there's been a lot of improvement about guidelines and policies, particularly from BRIN concerning research practices. But there are still some areas that can be confusing, or you might get slightly different information depending on who you talk to, around data sharing, around publishing, and around collaboration. And some of that is just like because of the nuance and complexity of any given research project and what kinds of data it generates and what kinds of partners you work with. Now that I'm working in a national park, I'm getting another glimpse and insight into some of those complexities and challenges. And so I definitely recommend reading through your research permits. If you do work in a national park, you'll get an extra research permit, and there's a lot of like really important information there to read and understand. And when you don't understand something, sometimes people will tell you it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. I definitely follow the opposite strategy when I'm working in Indonesia. I always ask for permission, and I don't want to mess around with trying to ask for forgiveness if I get it wrong. So just expect that there can be some confusing things there, and be prepared to ask questions when things are not super clear. And I think the last is really kind of about some of the differences in cultural practices or professional norms that can sometimes create a little tension or confusion. And I will say there's no one size fits all approach to a happy and successful partnership. That is true like in any country or discipline that you work in. People and departments vary greatly in their expectations of the kinds of resources, commitments, financial support that foreign counterparts should provide. Differences in the types of student engagement and support you can anticipate or expect, as well as norms for co-authorship and author order. And so I think, as Pa Anas said in the beginning, it's just good to kind of be really open about these things up front, communicate regularly, and when you can, to document things in writing in case future misunderstandings arise. So the good news is that these challenges can be navigated and obstacles can be conquered. And so far, I've been managing to do that for the last 20 years, hopefully another 20. And so I want to just kind of reflect on some of the things that I have found to be key ingredients for finding a joyful and successful research experience. And the first, of course, being good planning and preparation. So I think Pat Anas covered this very well in the beginning. So I won't really go into too much detail here, except maybe to just add, there are some like reports and things that you should be submitting to BRIN throughout your research period, staying in good communication with your counterpart, and then building in time to like present about your research before you start. And also, whatever you found or whatever you learned before you go home as well. The next is identifying excellent counterparts and trying to cultivate those relationships even before you arrive. These people are so much more than sponsors of your visas. They're advisors, collaborators, friends, confidants, an essential source of support during your research. And so a great counterpart can be a lifelong friend and have a profound impact on your future career. And I've been incredibly lucky to work with some of the best around. I don't know if this is true for everyone, but it's certainly for me doing field work. It's awesome to have more hands and bodies in the field, as companions, as research assistants, as mentees. Students can really be the heart and soul of field work, and though not every student is perfectly suited to every topic with patience and dedication, it's really inspiring and rewarding to watch those most committed students develop and grow into co-authors and into colleagues. I think it goes without saying that maintaining some flexibility and an open mind will be essential for staying afloat and weathering the many diverse kinds of challenges that come with living and studying in a foreign country. And it's equally important for cultivating strong, trusting relationships with your colleagues and with communities. And lastly, I just want to emphasize, I think Professor Maho also mentioned how important it is to share, and particularly, as academics, it's part of our duty to cultivate and share knowledge for the benefit of society. But it's also an incredibly potent ingredient for building trust, developing shared understanding, and building community with others. So take advantage of every opportunity, whether that's talking to kids in an elementary school, giving a guest lecture at a local university, training somebody in the field, a public lecture, whatever opportunity you have to share and to connect with people will really be incredibly rewarding for you, and a win-win in terms of the relationships and networks that you can build. And so I think that's it for me. Just want to say thanks to all of the amazing people and partners and sponsors that have been, I think this is just from the last few years, that have been supporting this work and allowed me to so far succeed in Indonesian research.
Thank you, Dr. Erb, and congratulations for the 20th anniversary with the Indonesian Research Award.
Oh, thank
And,
you.
and yeah, finally, we will hear from Chris Hulshof. He's a PhD student in history program at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Chris, you ready?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
As mentioned, I'm a dissertator at UW-Madison in the history department, and I was fortunate enough to, for my research, to visit Indonesia for a year under Fulbright, which ended a little bit over half a year ago, late summer of 2024. That research was entirely archival work, so quite a bit different than what we've spoken about so far. So today I want to focus on how to conduct research, specifically in archives, as opposed to with human subjects or animal subjects. Now, my research briefly is on national and international politics in the 1950s, 60s, basically from around independence to early Suharto period. Now, I do not have a PowerPoint, a lovely PowerPoint or anything like our other two speakers, or other three speakers, that is. But instead, I'm hoping to show a couple of things, shared screen, but primarily just have a frank discussion. I've been fortunate enough to work in about 24 archives in half a dozen different countries over 3 continents. So I have a little bit of perspective on the differences of working in Indonesia versus other locations, other nations, even though I am by far the least experienced in Indonesia out of all 3 of the speakers today. So I do want to make that. But what I hope to do is to give you a very realistic interpretation of the challenges and frustrations you might run into. And that's not to come off as pessimistic. I really enjoyed my time in Indonesia, and I obtained a lot of really good material in Indonesia. But it is a different beast than research elsewhere. And if you don't go in expecting that, you might have a rough time. You might find yourself surprised, frustrated. But if you have a normalized mentality of this is just part of the process, and we have a frank discussion without rosy pictures, I think it makes research there a lot easier, whether it's bureaucratic expectations, access to different places and topics, things like that. So what I'm going to do is basically go through a basic chronology of my experience, focus on 2 specific archives, which I think are the most used archives in Indonesia, particularly for foreign researchers, but also for Indonesian researchers, both in Jakarta, which are the National Archives Honorary, as well as the National Library. for Pustaka Nacional. And we'll just kind of go through the process and what kind of difficulties you might have. And I'll show you kind of on the website what you should do prior to arrival to kind of prepare yourself. Now, first and foremost, thank you, Anas, for that really great presentation on actually the first steps, getting your visas, your ethical clearance, so forth. Things have gotten a lot easier even, in the past year. So consider yourself all very fortunate. But just to give you a perspective, as Anas mentioned, it might take a while. It took me 11 months from the start of the process to being able to actually go to Indonesia, almost a full year. So you want to mentally prepare yourself for that. The MOU can be a nightmare, depending on when you get into the ethical clearance process, because they meet every few weeks. It might take you a month or two. It might take you 2 days. It's really hard to say how long it's going to take. So I took 11 months. I know somebody that took 10 months to get in. I know somebody that took 2 months. Like it's really, as Wendy put, whack-a-mole sometimes of exactly how the process is going to go. So just mentally prepare yourself for a pretty extensive process. And once you're there, everything's much easier than it used to be, as Anas spoke about. So once you get through that process, you're going to have a pretty smooth landing, in my opinion. Now, as far as getting into the archives, you also want to have a frank discussion with your advisors, with your counterpart in Indonesia, about the sensitivity of your topic. Indonesia is quite a bit different archivally than, say, other countries where there's a clear yes and no about what materials you can get and what you can't. And depending on your time period, your focus, you might have a very different experience with access. And that is both in terms of actual archives locations, as far as collections within those locations. So for an example, I have a friend who did research on a pretty positive aspect of early Suharto era foreign policy. He worked within a very prominent think tank in Jakarta, not to name them. He was given full access. I attempted to get access to the same think tank but my work's on a little bit more sensitive issue around the same time, and I did not receive access no matter how hard I tried, right? Similarly, I have a friend who was able to get into the archives of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I was not. Same with the Indonesian military's library. I've tried myself. I've sent several different Indonesian research assistants from different backgrounds. So don't think if you're having issues with access because of your topic, it's just you. It could actually be the topic itself. So you need to be prepared, depending on your topic, to be valuable, work with what you can get, be very strategic, things like that. Don't go in and just expect you're either going to have a yes or no. It's very clear what's yes or no, and it'll be an easy process. So with that said, I want to speak a little bit about the 2 archives that I think are most useful to speak about today. The first one being the National Archives, ANRI. So ANRI, located in Jakarta in the south. When you arrive, lots of security outside. It's the most difficult barrier is through the security in the parking. But once you get through, it's very clear. You go in, there's a front desk to help you out. They have lockers like you expect from any National Archive on the right, the reading room on the left. So I'm going to share the website here on the screen in a moment. But basically, you sign up for your days. There's typically plenty of room there, so you don't have to be too stressed. And you can get a consultation on your first visit. Now, the thing you want to keep in mind, if you have strong Indonesian language skills, very easy to get a consultation, very easy to get help. If you require English, there's only one archivist that speaks English there. Her name's Kiki. She's great. But if you're more comfortable in English, she's not there every day. She works from home as well. So you really have to be specific about that and plan accordingly. Now, the basic process in ANRI, they use paper pull forms. You fill out a piece of paper with what you need, you hand it over, you get your files about an hour later or so. So it's a fairly slow process. So you want to expect that. There's an hour break for lunch, expect that. And you are not permitted to take photos, which is very different from most archives around the world. At Henri, if you want to take a photo of anything, you need to check out Henri's tablet. And when you take photos on the tablet, it sends it to the Henri server. It doesn't save it on the tablet. And then at the end of the day, you go and you pay for a copy of the photos you took. It's 2,000 rupiah each. Sounds pretty cheap, but it adds up. So if you're like me and you like this quote unquote smash and grab where you photo everything and then do the research at home on your own computer, that kind of stuff, it cost me over a juta a day to do that. So it wasn't a realistic plan for Henri. Unlike other archives I've been to, I can take all the pictures, work at home. It would cost me thousands of dollars USD to do that. So please keep that in mind. If you only need a few things, it's really nice. But if you do take photos at the end of the day, give yourself 15 plus minutes. It takes them a little while to either transfer to USB or send it over to you, and be prepared to pay with an Indonesian bank transfer. So if you're there for an extended period, get your bank set up, get your mobile banking. From my experience, BCA has been the easiest for me, but hey, don't kill me if you're not a BCA fan. And keep that in mind. So it is a slower process. Each photo takes a moment to take because it's not saved locally. You have to check out the tablet in the morning. You have to check out the tablet after. You have to take a lunch break, things like that. So it's a little bit slower of a process than you're used to. And then for those that have been to other archives, it can be a little bit of a shock. Say even if you've gone to say like Singapore or Manila or something, the system in Henri, there's less oversight. The temperatures are more akin to what you'd expect in Indonesia as opposed to like an archive. A lot of the documents are in pretty rough shape. So you just want to go in, maybe bring headphones because the noise there is a lot louder than most archives. And just come in and be malleable, be flexible, and make sure that you've planned to allow it to take time. Now, I'm going to share my screen for the website really quick here, because one thing that you really need to do before going to Henri is check out the website and the inventory so you know what to pull. There you go. So basically, there's three things that you can look at. If you're on the website here, you go right down here. You can use an Indonesian or an English version. I suggest Indonesian if you can. Like most websites in Indonesia, the English versions can leave out some information that's always on the Indonesian version. But once you come here, you're going to have pretty much three places: a guide, RC inventories, and daftar. There's only like 20 guides. They're pretty basic. Don't rely on those, and instead go straight into the daftar or the inventories. Here, you're going to find a list of PDFs. You download them, and there's no standardized format for these. It just depends on the archivist that made them. But all of them basically have some sort of introduction. Some have glossaries. But the important part is the list of documents inside of that collection and the call numbers. That's what you need. Now, you might think that you can just look through the titles here, but I do want to warn you, there's a lot of documents in collections that are like very strange to be within that collection. I eventually found out that there's so much stuff that I needed that were in collections that seemed like it definitely wouldn't be there, that I ended up going through all of the inventories, 173, as you see here, and straight up just going through and seeing what's in every single one. So that's a very time-consuming process. Plan for that. Don't just show up and then start looking through stuff on the spot. You're going to waste a lot of time. So beyond that, if you go down to the bottom, pretty much any page right down here, the Visit Us link, you can actually set up your visits. So those are the two big things that you should know about the website. And again, just like on the spot, pretend to make sure that you have time, make sure that you're expecting delays. And then once you're there, it's a pretty simple process that you expect with any archive. You ask for the documents, you get the documents. You will see, depending on your topic, sometimes they're are gaps in archives. For an example, the papers of Lambertus Nicodemus Palar are there. He was U.S. Ambassador to the U.S., Indonesia's representative to the UN. Very full collection, except for the years in 65 and 66 when he was the ambassador in the U.S. It's just plucked right out. Also, I want to show you here, there are a couple of collections there that you need pre-approval to access. And this is really important if these are one of your topics. I'm just going to give you the list here. Long story short, if you're looking to get into the archives of the TNE, NU, Timor-Leste, PKE, you need pre-approval. And that can take a long time. My experience trying to get into one of these archives, I spent about 5 months going back and forth. It seemed like nobody really knew the exact process. Maybe there's not an exact process, exactly who to speak to. I ran around for nearly half a year until eventually they just told me, hey, we don't have this archive. Sorry, you can't have access. We don't even have it. We don't know where it is. But that sign's still there saying that they have the archive. So I don't know if they have that archive. I don't know if they don't. You might have a different experience depending on what's on this list here, but expect trouble, expect a little difficulty there. And again, just like everything else, time. Plan for that time, and as long as you know that you're going to need that time, you're not going to be frustrated. Be ready mentally that you need the time to try to get access, and you'll be fine. And if anybody needs this, shoot me an email. You can Google me and I can send you the whole list. But I don't have much time left, so I want to quickly move over to the National Library, which is a beautiful building further north, more central Jakarta. Unlike National Archives, it's a little bit weird when you first roll in. You go in, it seems like it's a small mini museum or something, and you actually walk through the entrance building, out the back, and through a courtyard into a larger building, and that larger building is the National Archives. It's a modern facility, really nice location, to be honest with you. And the system there is really nice. You go in, there's escalators in the middle or elevators on the right. You go up, if I recall, the third floor on the right. You can sign up. It's very obvious when you get there. You sign up, you bring all your paperwork, which you should to any archive or location, and you get a library card. Once you get the library card, you can use the website, which I won't waste your time with. It's a pretty easy website. And you can get paper documents, you can get books. They have a lot of pretty rare stuff. And I think for archival research, the microfilms is probably your most valuable place. They have a lot of microfilms that's really hard to find elsewhere in the world. And the microfilm team's up on the 5th floor, but there's only 2 microfilm readers. And that's for a very large national archive. So you want to plan that there's only 2 of them. They're a bit old, so every 2 hours or so, you have to let them rest for 15 to 30 minutes or they'll overheat. So they'll kick you off throughout the day. You might have people waiting and staring at you. You might get there in the morning and 2 other people got there before you. So again, there's a process. Plan for it to take a little bit longer than, say, someplace where you have plenty of microfilm machines. And they're a little bit older as well, a little bit slower. And like Henri, it's not free to take any copies. I forget the exact cost per like photo per se, but if you want to copy an entire reel of microfilm, it's about $100 USD. Which, say if you're going to get like multiple years of a newspaper or something, it can be really expensive. So if you don't have reimbursement for that, expect to sit there and take notes at the microfilm machine. And the team is really helpful. I'll close off here because I know I'm over time. The website looking through microfilm is a little bit difficult to find everything you need, but the microfilm team is great. They're super helpful over there, but there's not a lick of English. So if you are going in and you're better at reading but not speaking, keep that in mind. Particularly with the microfilm team, you really need to be able to speak Indonesian or potentially have somebody that could help you out. So I'm going to stop there since I'm well over time, but I think the main focus here that I really want to point out is just simply to expect longer process than you might be expecting elsewhere, whether that's be preparation ahead of time or while you're there, and remain malleable on how you go about your research, particularly when it comes to access. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Chris, and also thank you because you're the one who helped me with my archival work last summer. And okay, we actually have like two questions from Paulina. One from for Mas Anas. I mean, two questions for Mas Anas and also another questions for Chris. So the first one is the proof of living. What is mean by proof of living expenses, and what kind of documents that they can use to the proof of living expenses, and also the publication for the MOU, what kind of publications that they ask. And before we move into Chris, a question to Chris, I actually have a question for Professor Ishiguro and also Dr. Erb. So all of you experience to conduct research in the regional levels. Is there any kind of process, a different process, any other challenges conducting research in the region levels in the daerah, especially since all of the permit processes and also the preparation are handled in the national level in Jakarta? Were there any additional steps or approvals required from the local or regional governments? And yeah.
Is that to me, Masudo?
For Dr. Urban, Professor Ishiguro, both of you. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For me to be able to access forest areas, there's a diversity of owners or caretakers of different kinds of land. So, for instance, I've worked in KHDTK, which is Kawasan Hutan dengan Tujuan Khusus, like a hutan pendidikan, and those are managed by universities. So we must get permit letters from universities. I've also conducted research in like hutan tanaman industry, and usually we get the letters from the university that we deliver to the plantation to be able to get into the area. So there's plenty of examples where to get into a forest anyway, we need some kind of special permission letter to access that area. So definitely something to think about if you're doing environmental research.
For me, because it's not a science field, right? Like when you're doing like data collections for science and things, I think there might be more detailed things you need to do. I'm hoping I'm not forgetting any process, like steps like that. But with mine, I guess in the past there was a process you had to bring like the permission, or like you need to go to the police office of the local places you're staying, like the data you were staying. I can't remember whether my most current research required that. I think Mas Nanas can clarify, because I was in Jakarta for a few days and then I was in Solo for a few days. My impression was that the newest version, you have one and done kind of thing going on, but Mas Nanas could clarify for me. Oh, that smile is saying something else, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, so, wait. Let me clarify. For the living as proof of living expense first. Yeah. So in the context of research permitting process and visa application, it can be a bank statement. Yeah. It can be a scholarship or fellowship awardees letters, or a grant award documents that you receive from your donor. If you have bank statement, that's great. You can attach the bank statement. Sometimes it's required, sometimes not. But please check the website, the immigration website, if they ask you to, if they require you to what is it, the to attach or submit the bank statement. You can, if you have, please attach the bank statement, or you can also attach the grant over documents. And then about the collaboration to write publication for the MOU, does this mean joint publication are in the planning stages or already written? I think it refers to an intention to co-authorship or produce academic output, not necessarily something already written, but at least this signals a mutual commitment to share intellectual contribution between you and your host institution. I mean, with your counterpart. I hope that helps answer the address the questions.
Prof. Ishiguro, you said that there's some things that Mas Anas need to be clarified, right?
Sure. I had a question for Mas Anas.
Yeah.
After Wendy discussing about her, access to for a certain type of forest and research. Was I supposed to, so the last field work I did was in a few days in Jakarta and a few days, or like a few weeks in Jakarta and a few weeks in Solo. I remember in the past that I had to report to a local police, right? But is that still in practice, or is it like you get this E29 and all the visa stuff sorted out and that's done? Or how is it now? Sorry, I hope I did it right last time.
This is what's happening. So yesterday I was taking care of the SKC of one of the KL fellows. I went to the police office and tried to submit the documents, and the entrance staff said that this document is no longer is no longer exists in this police station. It's quite funny. And then I didn't believe him. Then I tried to go to the manual counters and ask the staff there, and ask if this processor still exists. Does this processor still exist? And the staff, the officer in the counter said, "Can I see your documents?" Sure. I give them the documents, and they said, "Oh yeah, please wait. We will proceed." And then they give me a receipt letter that I need to go back to the police station the 3 days later. So I need to wait, and they proceed. So there are some like confusion between the 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 stuff in the entrance gate and the stuff in the counter. But again, I think as long as the print mentioned that you need to go to to the national police, yeah, we have to go there. But if you like I said, it's less mandatory, less obligated. So if you don't have those documents, it's okay. I mean, the travel permit card is needed when you go to the rural area where the local police office is far from your side. If you are staying in major cities, I think that's I don't want to say it's not obligated. I would say it's less mandatory. So you can go ahead with the so don't worry. Yeah, don't worry. It's not needed for EPO or exit permit only. So those documents are not needed for the EPO or for the extension, research extension. So I hope that
I'm-
clarifies.
I believe Dr. Erb have something to ask.
Oh, just a quick addition, and I'm not an expert on Indonesian regulations, but I can speak from my own experience that working in a national park to get SIMAXI, which is what's required, to be able to access as a researcher, you definitely have to have the surat keterangan jalan, and you also must have the SPP. You cannot apply for SIMAXI until you have those. So that's just one small exception to the rule that maybe SKJ and SPP are not super important. They are for SIMAXI.
Yeah, agree. For SIMAXI, we've never helped our scholars to take care to handle the SIMAXI, so I'm not really familiar with the process. But yes, if you enter the conservation area, you will need SIMAXI, and to get the SIMAXI, you will need the complete documents from BRIN, from immigration, from police, and from Home Affairs Ministry. But if you if you're not planning to enter the conservation area, I think that's okay to skip this letter.
We actually have two questions from Alfu. I hope I pronounce it right. So yeah, it's about is there any different visa application process for a shorter research period under 1 month? This is actually something that a lot of master students ask to me, yeah, because they only have like a small amount of time to do research. And also, is a KITAS necessary then? And then the second question is there any mechanism to bring multiple researchers from the US under one researcher permit? Or does everyone have to apply for their own individual research permit? So I think it's Mas Anas.
Yeah, everyone should apply for their research permit. For the research permit and the visa immigration. Um, if you are as a one team, but please coordinate with the your counterpart. If I'm not really clear for this issue. If you are working in the same issues or in the same topics, I mean, as a team working in the same topic, I think you will only need one research proposal. But if you're working on different topics, you will need different application. But still, you can work with the same host institutions. A disclaimer, I can follow up with the brain for this. So I think I don't really I don't really help answer your question. Please feel free to send email, and I will follow up with the brain stuff directly.
Yeah, I believe.
Is there any?
Yeah. How about the first question about if it's only like a less than 1 month research? Is it possible for like a foreign researcher to just go to Indonesia with tourist visa and then like conduct a research or something like that?
Yeah, that's a big question from during this past years, during the new protocols. What about if I'm conducting research less than a month? For yeah, you still need permit from BRIN because it's part of the applications. You need the document surat izin penelitian, but for the stay permit, because it's less than a month, yeah, because each visa, a type of visa, will refers to the different purpose. So if you're conducting research, it means you need research visa. If you just go to Indonesia for vacation, you don't need that. You will need a different type of visa. So as it depends on the purpose of your visit, and we encourage you to follow the rules, even though it's 1 month. I guess I know you just need to meet a professor or college in Indonesia, so you don't really go to the field, or we just go to library or meet someone in the university, which is less than a month. But I think you need to if the time allows and the fund allows you to stay longer in Indonesia, I think it's better to because this current protocols in visa regulation, whether you stay in Indonesia less than a month or 3 months or 6 months, you need to apply for a 12-month visa process. You need to apply for a 12-month. They will give you a 12-month stay permit, and they will also give you izin masuk kembali or MERP. So it doesn't matter you live in Indonesia just less than a month or 3 months or 6 months. You need to pay for 1 year visa permit. I hope that clarifies the question. Okay, can the permitting be handled someone? Yeah. If you're staying, sorry, there is a follow-up question from Alfo. Follow-up question: can the permitting be handled somewhat remotely? Yeah, if you can, the permitting process is a pre-arrival procedure, so you can do it remotely. You can do it from anywhere. And make sure to always communicate with your Indonesian counterpart to help maneuvering the process, to help provide the paperwork. So it's basically the pre-arrival procedures. It's different from when you arrive to Indonesia. You no longer handle the permitting process because it's a pre-arrival procedures. So after you arrive in Indonesia, you can start your research. You don't need to go to immigration office or you just need to go to police office and home affairs ministry if needed.
Yeah, I think all of the questions in the chat box is already answered, but I just want to ask for all of our speakers, is there any stuff that you want to mention, and also maybe ask to another speakers about about the topics?
Can I share one amazing grant that I had recently that might be helpful for people writing dissertation?
For sure, yeah.
So I didn't use it because I didn't know that this existed, but this is a foundation that Wendy also mentioned. It's AAUW, American Association for University Women. I'll type it in somewhere. They have a variety of different fundings, and I got one this year to be in a sabbatical and just write on my book, right? But there's another one that is for I think it's for dissertation writing. It might have to be post field work. I know it has to be post like qualification exam. So you have to be like PhD candidate. But it's a stipend that would allow you to really just focus on writing, right? And I would really recommend you look into it if you're a woman. One of the eligibility is that you have to be a woman to apply for it. So sorry for the male audience in this group. And if you're doing STEM, that's one of the topics that they request to be like the project topic that you're working on. Another one, I'm not doing STEM, but my topic was gender. It was about women's performing arts. And that's, if you're not doing STEM, then that's another topic that they accept for the application. It seems like, a lot of us work with funding like Fulbright. What else is out there? But, knowing how the government is operating these days, and the AAUW seems to be not dependent on perhaps in the government funding, or at least I haven't heard that. And my funding came through this year completely fine, and I know there's next year's funding is apparently secured as well. So if you're looking for a year that you can write, and you need the funding. That's something that some of you might want to look into. I'll put that information in the chat.
Thanks, Professor Ishiguro. I just remember that I actually missed a question for Chris, and I'm gonna let Chris to answer several questions that is already in the chat box.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, if I'm going to answer, Paulina, you had a question about what consultation means at the archives. So I'd say about half archives, from my experience, require you to speak with the archivist before getting any access, which is generally just a basic overview. What's there, what to do, what are the rules, things like that. So nothing too stressful. Some will do it via email, some through Zoom, some in person. So National Archives in Jakarta does it in person. So you have to do that before you get anything, basically. So if you speak Indonesian, it's really easy. There's always someone there. If you struggle in Indonesian, just make sure individuals there that can help you. And the other question, we had some really good help in the chat as well, on the newspapers, on the finding guides. Advice again for any archive: don't just go off finding guides. There's some pretty surface level ones. It's only, like 20 at the National Archives, so you've got to imagine they're not too in depth for a place with millions of documents. But any archive anywhere that you have finding guides, just keep in mind they're never full. There's always more documents not within those finding guides. And that doesn't matter whether you're in the National Archives in Indonesia, the National Archives in America, if you're going to a presidential archive. So if you can go through inventories, always go through inventories. It's going to help you a lot more. I guess there's another one. Since it popped up, I'll keep going. Are there any tips for the National Library? So on the floor. Hey, that's not a question. That's a good, helpful proposition. Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm so sorry for the jump karet for this event. It's already 12 minutes more than the scheduled one. Yeah, I didn't find any question that we need to answer. But yeah, anyways, thank you very much for all of the speakers. This is some things that really amaze me. I genuinely learn a lot from this session. Even I'm Indonesian. Yeah, a lot of the new stuff that is really important for my research in the future. And yeah, please, everyone, if any of you have a questions about how to conduct research in Indonesia, as all of our speakers mentioned, just ask AIFIS, some help from AIFIS, and also the Aminef. And yeah, I believe that they will be also gladly help all of you. And also reach Getsi, because there's also several persons in Getsi that will happily help you to conduct research in Indonesia. And yeah, it's already almost 7:45, and yeah, Mas Anas also need to go to work, I believe. So yeah, I really appreciate for all of the speakers' time and also participant time. I hope it will be a good step for you to prepare for all of your research in Indonesia this summer, or maybe in the next summer, or maybe in the another years, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, thanks for all of the times, and yeah, terima kasih banyak.
Terima kasih.
Yeah.
Terima kasih.